Welcome to the Stephen Shiels radio show. David Lewis is back on. How are you, David?
Uh, Very good, thanks, Steve. Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
It's great to have you back on. A lot's changed with the US election. Donald Trump's not in power anymore. Joe Biden's taken over. I think things have seemed to calm down a bit in the United States of America. What's your opinion on Donald Trump?
So much. Donald Trump represented two things. One, he represented to people who felt disaffected, who felt disconnected, and who felt separate from the system. He represented to those people a change.
Mm-hmm.
What he actually represented, though, was a con. He was in the presidency to make money, which is not why you become any world leader.
Mm.
He was in the presidency to scam as much money as he could out for him and his friends. His major achievement were massive tax cuts that benefited only the rich and that didn't trickle down. The trickle-down theory of economics has been discredited. So I think he was very lucky to avoid jail so far. I think I feel very sad for those who felt disconnected and thought he was the guy. He was part of the establishment. Now the establishment doesn't like him anymore, but you know he was the heir to a fortune. He was the he was a billionaire. The fact that he was an outsider in these circles, I think, says volumes. He only owns 6 buildings in New York City, which for a property developer is pretty pathetic. Most of his property is the rest of America, and that's mostly because a lot of people in New York won't deal with him. I was in New York a couple of years back, and the level of contempt of that the New York citizens that I spoke to held him in was quite amazing.
So he's Donald Trump's filed bankruptcy as a businessman as well. You got the media and there are African Americans that don't like him. When Tiger Woods won I think it was the 2019 Masters, Tiger Woods is African American. He gave Tiger Woods an award. Now, I get a bit confused with that because you get people saying that he's a racist and then he give Tiger Woods an award for playing golf. Not only they played golf together.
Racism is a very complex thing in many ways. You'll have people who will say the most appalling things about other races and yet be friends with people they approve of. In Donald Trump's actions, in Donald Trump's words to general people, he certainly used racist terms. That he gave Tiger Woods an award doesn't make you, doesn't make you not racist. It's the whole "some of my best friends are black" argument. It means nothing. Donald Trump, of course, was born and grew up in a period of time where how do I say this? Where this was much more acceptable, and we now know it's not acceptable to be racist. And I think there's a fairly large majority of the American voting public who think that now, and so he lost.
I know a lot of people that there are people that like Donald Trump.
Sure,
They
definitely.
I think he wanted to get the old America back again, where things were made in America. Minimum wage was going to go up because years and years ago, Americans had better pay than they did now.
Mm.
So I could see that from a business point of view. But do I think he was suitable to be president? No, I don't. I think he just should have stayed as a businessman.
Yeah, the presidency either makes you or breaks you as a human being, and it certainly broke him. I think he didn't grow. He didn't rise to the challenge of it. He based his presidency on falsehoods. I think he let down everyone who voted for him. Some of course agreed with the racism, maybe tacitly, but they certainly agreed with it. And those days should never have been around, and they've long passed. So, and this whole idea of making America great again, he did nothing to he didn't. Instead of giving tax cuts, he could have invested money into infrastructure. He could have invested money into incentives for manufacturing. He could have raised the minimum wage.
Healthcare, especially, I think.
He could have fixed the healthcare. Now, he tried to do what he saw as fix the healthcare. But that was mainly what he really wanted to do was dismantle Obamacare. If you read Obama's memoirs, healthcare is a highly complex thing. In Australia, we look at it as in, or mostly we look at it as in, well, if you're sick, you should go to hospital, and your taxes or your Medicare levy should pay for that. And some people, and that this is the nature of broad-based tax system. Some people may never use a hospital. Other people may be in there often, but you throw your money into the common pool. Those who need it get it. Those who don't need it get it. They get it in some other way. Roads and schools and law and order and transport infrastructure, and on it goes. Welfare, and there's this debate in the States that has been hijacked by really the vested interests about how public medicine is socialism, which isn't necessarily the case. And even if it is, surely it's better for people to be able to go to the hospital, not come out with thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars in debt.
I do know that people on disability and senior citizens get Medicare and Medicaid or something.
Yep.
But still, then the pharmaceuticals are expensive in the United States as well. Everywhere.
Yeah, and it shouldn't be. If you need hospital, if you need healthcare, a friend of mine who's American was saying he's surprised at how cheap medications are here, except for aspirin. He said aspirin is very cheap in the States, but expensive here, which I found interesting. Yeah. Anyway.
No, it happens. But look, we look at Australia, and I'm a Liberal supporter. I like what our government's doing and handling the pandemic here. I think both the Labor and the Liberal governments have their good and bad as well. Liberal, we had Malcolm Turnbull, and then we had was Tony Abbott, and then Scott Morrison's been taking over. I felt Turnbull and Abbott really didn't do much for us at the time.
Um, it it becomes complex. I, as I think your regular listeners might know, I'm a historian, and one of my specialties is Australian history.
Mm.
Tony Abbott, I don't think, wanted to achieve much. Again, it was tax cuts for the wealthy. Also, I don't think he knew how to run the office. I don't think he could do the job.
Mm.
Malcolm Turnbull was the same. Plus, he had a large proportion of the party that worked against him.
Mm.
Nonetheless, this wasn't to say he was a great man cut down by any standards. He didn't know how to manage the party. Scott Morrison, I think I will leave off commenting till I've got a bit of a broader historical perspective.
Mm.
Yeah. I will say I think we've been extremely lucky in Australia rather than well managed with the pandemic. The state governments have tended to do very well. The federal government maybe less well, but again, I'll hold off until it's all over, and then we can have a look at everything in context.
Mm. No, but that's just how I see it. I feel great to live in Australia. I feel the Liberals just do things better. You know, both are good. I like Anthony Albanese and Bill Shorten. I think are good. You know, but as I said, it's you have to have a vision of what you want to achieve.
Yes. I don't see a lot of vision either side, to be quite honest. But again, you can tell a lot of this stuff at the end rather than in the middle. And I think we're still in the middle at the moment. So I'm going to hold back and see what happens.
Yeah, no, exactly. And, there's been so much, I remember last year the politics involved with the vaccine. Vladimir Putin said he had a vaccine. And they're blaming China, Russia, blaming Russia. It's like it's become a political football match with COVID-19.
Yes, it all over. And in countries where it's disastrous, like England, and they're still playing politics. In America, they were playing politics, and still are. And we know that the vaccine works. One of the vaccines, the Pfizer vaccine, had 89.8% efficiency in the trials. Now, trials are never fully representative of what happens out there because you just can't test every single development. You can't test for every contingency. That's the word I'm after. And so it may have a slightly better one, or it may have a worse one. But we know it's pretty good. The AstraZeneca one is 70%, something like that. And again, that's probably a little high for what it is. But it is the first corona-style virus to have a successful vaccine. The SARS vaccine and the MERS vaccine, the SARS disease and the MERS disease are still untreatable. So, there's a real triumph and success there. But the aim is that enough people are truly vaccinated against it that those that it doesn't work against won't have it because the virus won't be there. Yeah.
No, but look, I hope. I don't know how the Australian government's going to vaccinate everyone. There's talks about having a green card. So if you're going to travel, you have to have a card saying you're vaccinated. It has to be on your Medicare records as well. I don't know how they're going to give the jab to everyone, David.
I think it's mostly voluntary, and they're going to prioritise it, which is the right thing. So quarantine workers, frontline health workers, the aged get it first, and then your second line health workers and your other health workers, people who are, other hospital professionals get it next, and then people. I don't know the exact, but it starts with those most likely to get it or most at risk. And moves out to the rest of the population, and that's as it should be. Whether everyone will get it, there are some people out there who are refusing to get it. That they don't want a vaccine for the loopy reason that Bill Gates has put in 5G. 5G chips into it so we can all be traced, to reasons of allergy. Some of them have things that people are allergic to. And these are serious reasons as to not to get it. If you can have it, I would encourage you to get it. I think Bill Gates doesn't really want to know where you are. Jill Smith of Engadine, he doesn't care, seriously. But it sorry. It's important that we get vaccinated, It's possible that, some people who needed it first will miss out. But that's because huge bureaucracies make these mistakes. They can't help it, The main thing is keep socially distancing, keep wearing a mask outside, keep washing your hands, and when it's time, get the vaccination. And that's how we'll beat it.
Well, yeah, we can only do what we can do.
Exactly.
And it's I don't know how this virus came about in the first place.
No, they're still trying to work it out. It's not from a lab. We know that much. I understand, and there's a lot of misinformation going on because certain governments don't want the responsibility for it. So there's been a little bit of, it might have been this too, which muddies the water. I understand that it probably didn't originate in those food markets, which originally got the blame, though got in there somewhere else, somehow else. There was a bad flu go around Europe in November of 2019, which may have been a variant. And so there's maybe talk that maybe we should be looking at Italy or Ireland as a potential. But yeah, whether it's just a mutation of an earlier virus or whether it's something else, I don't know, and I'm not sure. Excuse me, I'm not sure that anybody does.
Well, you look at the cells of coronavirus. It's got like a little sort of box-shaped thingy
Mm-hmm.
And I was watching this from the Great Courses Plus, how it gets into the your nose or your on your skin, and then. But the idea how this spreads so quick is just... when I first heard about COVID-19, I thought it was just nothing, David. I thought it was just a little virus. You know,
a lot of people did. A lot of people thought it's just a mild flu,
and
then turns out for some people it may be a mild flu. And the other thing we don't know yet too, there's a suspicion that it lays dormant in your system. So if you've been asymptomatic, and there's up to 30% of people that are asymptomatic, which is why Australia isn't out of any danger yet. When we look at the testing numbers, where 0.15% of the population was tested in Auburn last week, that's not even a representative sample. And they're saying, there's only 1 or 2 cases active in that area. But if 30% of cases are asymptomatic, and we know that we've had a couple of hundred cases there's still potentially 100 people walking around with it and not knowing, if not more. And yeah, we don't know if it flares up. We don't know if it's a recurring thing. There's a strand of what's called long COVID, where people have been sick since March last year and are still sick. Some people have died, and there's no discernible pattern. I remember the week a 102-year-old lady got released from hospital after having it, a 20-year-old man died from it. Now, I'm not saying, the old lady should have died. It's fantastic she got out. It really is. But, a young, fit 20-year-old died from it. So it's not a disease which has a logical, or at least a pattern which we can say, yes, okay, the sickly 102-year-old can get it. She's not going to make it, but the 20-year-old will be fine. It's not that at all. Donald Trump had it, and given his physical prowess, you would have thought that he would have been very, very sick, but he seemed to have got through it okay. Now, there's reports that he was a lot sicker than he was making on, but he still seems to have recovered from it.
Yeah, Boris Johnson caught it twice.
Caught it twice and was in intensive care. And again, Mr. Johnson isn't the fittest person around. If we compare him to, say, Tony Abbott, the smart money would go on Tony Abbott in a foot race. If we yet he was very sick, obviously. He was in intensive care, but he seems to have got through it okay. So again, we don't know. We don't know how it affects, who it affects. Still a lot to learn about it. Exactly. So again, wash your hands, wear a mask, be socially distant. Yeah. Think about your older relatives. It does hit the elderly harder than young people. We know this. So yeah.
No, exactly. A lot's changed with the 2019, 2020, 2021 pandemic so far. We had a really bad bushfire season, because I'm a volunteer bushfire fighter. I went up to Bargo when it was the shit hit the fan that day.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, we're hit with a pandemic. 2020 was just the weirdest year of my life.
It if you wrote it, no one would believe it. And you would get. I think it was on Twitter. Someone said, "Not enjoying this 2020 show. It was okay till the protests started in the middle of a pandemic." Yeah, right. And it's exactly like that. It's been the weirdest year. We had a pandemic in 1919, 1920, 1921, 1922. Partly it went for 4 years because it couldn't travel around the world as quickly as it did. That one seemed to come out of France or out of America, with American troops going to World War One.
Spanish flu.
The only reason it was called the Spanish flu is because the Spanish government were actually quite honest about numbers and treatments, and so any figures people got were from Spain. It didn't start in Spain, and Spain wasn't any better or any worse than anywhere else. But they were being honest about, we've had so many infections this week, and this is what we've got to do, whereas other governments were trying to cover it up. The Spanish flu is a bit of a misnomer. Probably more accurately, you'd call it the American flu or even the French flu, because when it gets to France, that's where it starts to spread. It killed more people than World War One did. So it was a bad one. And the really interesting thing is that, apart from nerds like myself, we'd forgotten it. It's not part of popular culture in the way that World War One is. We have a memorial for World War One. We talk about World War One all the time. We've made movies about World War One. World War One, people will talk about their ancestors who fought and died and what have you. No one ever really said, "Oh yes, my great auntie Esmeralda died of the Spanish flu in 1920." And there's a whole range of reasons, I suppose, but we really don't know what they are. So almost exactly 100 years later, when this one hits, and there were 4,000 people dying a day in the United States, which, when you think about it, is incredible. It's tragic. I forget what the numbers were in Britain. It wasn't quite that high, but Britain doesn't have the population. I think it might have been 1,000 dying. Whether this one will enter the public consciousness, and I suspect it will, because it wasn't preceded by a, inverted commas, great war. It just came from really seemingly nowhere and caught nearly everybody by surprise.
Yeah, no, that's what's happened even with this pandemic as well, starting in Wuhan, China.
We think.
No, yeah, it's well, look, there is going to be another pandemic in the future that'll be worse than this.
Oh yes, one thing viruses are like every other form of life. They want to survive. It's their evolutionary instinct to survive, and to grow and to change and to adapt. And yeah, there's going to be another one. It may not be in our lifetime. If it is, we'll be prepared. We sit down, we don't get paid, we whinge about, how horrible it is to stay at home and watch Amazon Prime or Netflix all day. and we'll cope with it a lot better. I think we wear our masks, we keep socially distanced, we we only go out when absolutely necessary. I think if it happens again, it won't be as momentous as this one.
What's momentous mean?
Big. It won't be as notable as this one. This one, I think we will remember, and I think it will enter into our consciousness as something that happened in a way that the 1921 pandemic didn't. So I think that it will be remembered as a moment in time, in the way that World War I, World War II, the Great Depression, what else? Any of those. Yeah. So, yeah. Whereas, the poor old the poor old misnamed Spanish flu gets almost forgotten, despite killing more people than World War I did. And World War I industrial.
It was a forgotten flu because I never heard about it growing up.
You generally hear about it in passing. Some of the better historians wrote about it, but not in the way that, I think now there's books coming out. There were a few historians who had written about it, but they were books that, that most historians would sort of go to try and get a bit of extra local colour. Now there's a lot of good work going on about it. And I guess World War I's a bit more interesting because it's got the literature, it's got the songs, it's got the memorials built, and those memorials too were built during the pandemic often, and as a way to not distract, but to, distract from the grind of the pandemic. And remember, in 1921, you couldn't work from home, really. You still had to go somewhere because there were barely telephones around.
All the church services closed. People were hoarding food as well. I heard that people's temperatures were so much more higher than COVID-19. It had a much higher. It killed probably 1% of the world's population. And it even came to Australia and New Zealand. The Easter show got cancelled that year, like we did last year as well. And, either people had herd immunity to it, so it just died out, or I don't know if they found aspirin to treat it. They basically just starved it out through good. Well, it took two years, I think. I think ours will take 2 years because it's just the nature of it. But we might find out next week. Oh, it's been eliminated. Well done. That's not going to happen. I wish it was like that.
It would be good.
Yeah. No, it's interesting. I saw there was a movie with Sacha Baron Cohen. He did Amazon Prime. He was taking the piss out of Donald Trump and COVID vaccine.
All right.
Well, yeah. That was an interesting one.
It was. He brought up some interesting points.
Oh God. Nah, but see, over in the States, in Europe, and Canada, they never took they don't take social distancing seriously like here.
It seems not. There was certainly there's certainly a group of people who have to sorry, I'll start that again. There's certainly a group of people who didn't take it very seriously. I think in Australia, we tended to socially distance anyway. So that helped. You know, we were already standing a metre apart. It was just a little bit further. In other countries, because of population density, you know, if you've ever been to Tokyo or Bangkok or New York or London, it's actually very hard. There's, you know, 20 million people crammed into an area the size of Sydney or smaller, you know, the population of Australia. And so social distancing is a bit easier here, you know, especially once you get out of the city. And I think that helps in Australia. Yeah.
David, fantastic show with you today.
Always a pleasure, Steve.
It's good to have you back on. Tell people where they can find you on social media.
You can find me on Instagram. I think it's DLEW2192. I look forward to seeing you there and see pictures of my cat.